Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Let's Talk once again. I am here with the very awesome Mr. Chris Wyatt, and I've been very vague with the title of this video. I called it The Myth of Trump, which could go either way. We don't know which way it's going to go. But let me say this. I'm going to say this. This is my little intro. Some call him a racist. Some even call him a white supremacist. Some call him stupid, idiotic. He's been called a fascist. He's even been called a dictator. It's been said that he cares more about money than lives. He's even, at one point, they've tried to target him as a pedophile. Let me make one thing clear. Me and Chris may not like Trump as a person, but we definitely support him. So let's talk. Yes, you heard correctly. Chris Wyatt and I both support Trump. Now, I know some of you are probably watching this and going like, oh my God, Joe, why? Why, Chris, why? Why? Well, that is what we're going to talk about. We are not here to convince you to support him. No. We're not. That's not our job. But what we're going to do is present some facts to you, some things that you may have not seen due to the media and its hatred towards him and what they're trying to do and what they're trying to, their agenda behind that. And everyone is entitled to their own opinions and beliefs. And we are happy to take up any questions that you guys might have. And I think that this is going to be a very interesting conversation because Chris is ex-military, which means that he has insight into the US government, the systems, and the way it operates. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the first myth about President Trump, which is that he is a racist. Chris?
So, Joe, are you saying that he's not a racist? Did I miss a news update? Apparently, that's what I've been told. I've been told Donald Trump's a racist. It's funny how he hung out with Jay-Z and all these big celebrities and basketball players and the guy. Anyway, yeah, that is a bit of a myth. And a lot of things are used to support that myth by the mainstream media and by social media and those who don't like him. You know, it's very funny because Donald Trump was a very popular figure in Hollywood with his Apprentice show and his support of Hollywood celebrities, a socialite for a long time. Nobody cared about his foibles, being married multiple times, having children with different women, or, you know, they were all for him when he was publicly in favor of abortion and when he declared himself as a Democrat. But the moment that Donald Trump declared for the presidency, he was a bit of a joke for the left. And then the media thought, hey, a chance to make some money. So they gave him all the airtime that they could possibly muster. Probably gave the guy over $1 billion worth of free press coverage in the primaries, which helped knock out all his Republican opponents. And then they're like, holy crap, this guy's actually going to be the nominee. Oh, well, then we just got to find stuff on him. And then, of course, they go through archives and dig up all sorts of tapes from the past that they've had all along, trying to have an October surprise. But in their ineptitude, they missed the entire point of why Donald Trump was elected in this country. He wasn't elected because he's a racist. He was elected because enough people in enough places in this country were tired of the deep state, as people call it now, and the Washington bureaucracy and the feckless Congress that has done nothing to represent people. That's the view a lot of people have. I'm not speaking for them. I'm just saying that. But give me an example of something where somebody says a racist, and I'll pull out an example why that's just utter nonsense. I've seen nothing from Donald Trump since he's been president that would indicate to me he's a racist. In fact, if we're talking racism specifically from a black and white issue, the guy has done more for the black community, if such a thing exists. I just made a point of saying there's no such thing as black community, but he's done more for African Americans in America than any other president in history. And, you know, remember we had Lincoln, we had this 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, which ended slavery, granted citizenship to the people who had formerly been in bondage, those sorts of amendments. And then we also had the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which occurred during the Lyndon Johnson administration, despite his strident opposition to it. And I still say with a certainty that Donald Trump has done more. He has more black Americans in positions of power in his cabinet and throughout the government than any administration in history. In addition to that, he also has something I was not entirely in favor of, not because I opposed it, but because of the way it was presented, criminal justice reform, ending mandatory sentencing for things like drug offenses, which affect overwhelmingly black American men. So that's a huge issue there. And he's the only president to tackle it. Barack Obama was president for 8 years. I don't recall him ever even raising the issue of criminal justice reform. Not to mention Donald Trump, despite the fact that morally you might think the guy's had a questionable life, but he spends more time with black church leaders around the country than any president I've ever seen. And the list goes on and on. So look, Joe and I are not here to defend Donald Trump. Both Joe and I find him, and if I speak wrongly for you, Joe, you let me know, but I think we both find him to be a cad, a bore, a bully, a troll, and we'd really appreciate it if he'd tone things down at times. Oh, Joe the bobblehead. I don't have to get a sports figure bobblehead. I got Joe now. No, but I think both of us feel that way about Donald Trump, but I, without reservation, will tell you that I cast a vote for him in 2016, less for Trump and more so against his opponent. This time, I will unabashedly vote for Donald Trump, and I will campaign for Donald Trump because he has helped get America back on the path. Now, you can take the COVID-19 hysteria nonsense out of the way. That's not really the issue here. So it's interesting today, just before I stop here and let Joe get back in, Daniel Pipes, who's a Jewish American academic who is well known as an extreme conservative, has been an outspoken, strident, never Trumper. Called Trump, what do you call him? He called him Trumpolini, as in Mussolini, because he considered him a fascist. And I've got some quotes here from him. It's a Newsweek op-ed that came out today in which Daniel Pipes, who's hated Trump, comes out and says, in the end, oh my God, I still don't like the guy, but there's no way I'm not voting for him. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So, I mean, anyway, this is one of the never Trumpers. If you can convince the never Trumpers to vote for you, that's even easier than getting the leftists to vote for you in this country. But anyway, go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, so I do want to say, guys, that I have linked some interviews, not necessarily just with Trump, in the description below on certain aspects or myths that people have been spreading about him. Some of the stuff you may not see in the mainstream media. So, for example, the one they're interviewing an activist, a black activist in America, who I think was the son of another black activist back in the day who supported Malcolm X. And back in President Trump's run for president, this black activist, he's still a black activist, support and endorsed President Trump. Because he was saying, and you'll find this with all the interviews that they do with the African Americans in America, especially in Detroit. For example, there's one I've linked at the bottom below, where they say that Obama was president for 8 years. That was a Democrat, did absolutely nothing for their community. But since Trump has been president, has done a lot for their community. And there's even a clip, to Chris's point, there's a clip at the bottom that I've linked as well, where Trump is meeting with pastors and priests of the black community and discussing how to address the problems of the black community and uplift the community. There's also a link for those of you who may think that Trump just boasts about the economy for no reason. No. There is a link below that totally proves the economy is better under Trump administration. And we'll get into that a bit more later. But I just wanted, the racist thing is something that I think for both me and Chris, and this is what happened with me. I'm gonna be honest about this one. 2 days ago, someone, I'm not gonna mention their name, I'm not even gonna say how I'm affiliated with them, but someone messaged me and was questioning a tweet that I basically retweeted the tweet of President Trump saying that Antifa is going to be labeled as a terrorist organization. I retweeted it with the caption saying USA, USA, USA. I agree with Trump. Now, this person, messaged me and said, why, Joe, do you side with Trump? Which is actually the reason for this live stream at the moment, to be honest. And yes, I don't like the fact that because you support or someone supports Trump, the media seems to be winning, because the moment you say, I support Trump, everyone labels you as a racist. And I think that is so unfair, because anybody that knows me or Chris knows that we are far from that. Far from that. We support all lives. We support all human beings. We fight for the rights of our fellow man. And Chris himself has been in the military and fought for freedoms and liberties of the United States of America. So I take great offense for someone to say that to me or anyone else.
No, but it's the option of first resort for so many race merchants and haters, and people try to silence you. For instance, I've been in conversations where you have no basis conversation. You're a white male. You're an American. Yeah, and what's that got to do with anything? Do I have to be a gerbil in order to be in this conversation? That's just ludicrous. You don't know what it's like. Well, you may not know that. You're just making that assumption. It's very frustrating when you try to have a cogent conversation, people automatically default to that nonsense. I've worked for Black, Asian, white, male, female bosses in uniform, and I've had all those folks who've been my subordinates, far more subordinates than bosses, because a lot of people work for me over the years. And I've had Black Africans who've worked for me. I've had Arabs who've worked for me. I've had Hispanics who work for me all over the world and in Africa, the two of those groups. And then I've also had gay colleagues. And I just get a chuckle every time when people default, well, you're just this because that. It is, in fact, racist of the people who look at you and assume you are something based on your appearance. That is the ultimate arrival at race right there. What is the point of that? And how can you make the claim that someone doesn't know something? See, the thing with Trump is it's easy. He's got this orange hair, whatever color it is, blonde, I don't know, orange man bad. But with Trump, it's easy because he looks a certain way, so you can call him certain things and get away with it. The nonsense, the hatred, the hate speech that Don Lemon spews on his program and Rachel Maddow spews on her program, it's just insane. Now, as far as you saying USA, 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 in the same vein, the government of South Africa is full of lunatics and incompetent, illiterate turds right now who are running the country. Oops, did I say that out loud? This is a comedy show, right? Anyway, so right now there are some legitimate people in the government, but there are some buffoons running things in South Africa at the moment. Some inmates are running the asylum. But if South Africans tell me they're proud of their country and they're proud of their heritage, whether they're Zulu, Xhosa, Venda, Afrikaners, English even the English, we'll give them a break. But anyway, if they say they're proud of being South African, I don't go, well, how can you be that way? That's the government. It supports oppression and murdered Collins Kosa. What are you, a racist? What are you, a totalitarian? Are you a fascist? No, that's ridiculous. And whoever said that to you, Joe, they're not intellectually honest, or they didn't think about what they wrote. They responded emotionally. And emotion is a powerful tool. And that's what people use against Donald Trump.
Yeah, well, let me correct myself there. This person didn't call me a racist. They just immediately wanted to know why I'm batting, in his words.
No. I didn't infer that. I didn't infer that. What I meant, if I misspoke, what I inferred from that is that they ask you why you were USA, why you were supporting Trump. Yeah. Well, why can't you support Trump? What did Trump do? Did Trump do something wrong? No, he does things that are wrong. In fact, they don't call him out on that. That's the irony. Trump makes plenty of mistakes, but they ignore those mistakes because it doesn't fit their political agenda. But anyway.
Look, I think we both, like we said in the beginning, we both agree that and I think this is what I have to tell people all the time. Like, people are like, yeah, but he says stupid things. Yeah, he does say stupid things. He does, absolutely. But one thing I've noticed, there is a difference, and I encourage all of you to go and YouTube this, Google this, watch when he was coming into office, that campaign. Watch those speeches, then watch his current speeches. There is a difference. It might not be a big difference, but he has kind of toned down some of the things that he said. He has become a little bit more political correct, if I can say that. But he has always been and always will be a businessman. And that is how he thinks. He thinks like a businessman. If you're in a board meeting and you have to make a decision, he doesn't have time for feelings and all that stuff. No, it's like, cool, that's what needs to happen for this to happen. Boom, make it happen. Doesn't care. He's cutthroat, and that's just the life he's been in. He's created millions. He's a businessman. And let's move on to one of the other myths, that he's greedy and that he puts money. And I think this comes from the COVID pandemic, where people are saying that he's putting, because he wants to open up America again, he wants to get the economy going again, that people are saying that he prefers money over lives. Now, there's a very important thing that I asked Chris recently, and it's been verified. Chris, does Donald Trump take a salary?
No, he doesn't. He doesn't take a salary. Donald Trump's federal salary from the government, which the last time I checked is $435,000 a year. So that would be like 60 billion rand at the current exchange rate. So Joe didn't laugh. Yeah, no, it's okay. Yeah, so no, $435,000 a year. Every single penny of it he donates. Now, he can't donate to charity. So what he can do, the way the system is set up, is he can give the money back to the federal treasury and designate where it goes. And he has been doing that. Every single penny of his salary since he's become president has been donated back to the federal budget to different departments for different purposes. That's what he's done. He doesn't take not even a dollar, not a single dollar. That's a fact. That's a matter of public record. You can look it up. Go look it up and you can see it. It's a matter of public record. But the media never talks about that. Meantime, every former president from Gerald Ford, $50,000 a speech, to Barack Obama parlaying his fame into $35 million to do nothing for Netflix except raise my subscription prices. They profit off of their past. The one exception perhaps being the Bushes. Neither one of them really used their presidency to make money off of, but all the others have done it. So anyway, but Donald Trump is not making any money for his presidency. He doesn't need any money. His money's in a blind trust, and he's still getting money off of that. So, but not only does he not need it, he's not taking it. So greedy, whatever. But if people are saying that because of the lockdown and trying to get people back to work, then they don't understand how the world works. South Africa is not going to have anything to go back to if they don't begin ease. I know they eased up, a lot of people went back to work, but a lot of jobs are gone. They need to get rid of these things, or there'll be nothing there for, you can lock people down, but when there's no food in the pantry because nobody harvested it, nobody planted, nobody brought it to the marketplace, then people are going to be hungry. And those are the jobs people need to get back to. It's the same thing happening here in the States. People are saying greedy. I have a local dealership here, sells cars. The owner told people on Facebook, he said, listen, I have the capital to survive this. And he does. His father founded the business 50 some years ago, and they have lots of capital resources so they can survive. And in part because the government has forced them to lay off almost all their employees because of contact with persons. So what happens is that he's working with a skeletal staff that does emergency repairs for vehicles in the garage and things like that. And all the salespeople and his customer clerks are laid off because the government will arrest him if he hires them back. So he's got money. But he had 141 customers or something like that who purchased vehicles that the government said they couldn't come pick the vehicles up they bought 3 months ago, which is crazy. And all the people that work for him, they're the ones that need money. A lot of them living from day to day, from paycheck to paycheck, and they can't get back. So the people that take the intellectually dishonest position that Donald Trump arguing for lifting the lockdown to go back to economic activity because he's greedy are a bunch of morons, or they're intellectually dishonest, or they're not capable of cogent thought. If I offended anybody, that's not my intent. But if you think that way, you're not being honest with yourself, or you don't know how the world works.
Yeah. And I think this will go in nicely with the economy. So, yes, Trump, we've established now, doesn't take a salary, which I think could be the first president in history to do so. Correct me if I'm wrong. But the economy, and I've researched this just to be sure, the economy, because some people argue that, Trump is taking credit for the things that Obama put in place when he was in president that are only now affecting the economy. So now Trump is taking credit for that. Let's talk about that. What do you say to that, Chris?
Well, I say that that's ludicrous and shows a complete misunderstanding of macroeconomics or economics in general. For starters, Barack Obama was president for 8 years, and I'm not going to accept the excuse that we had the greatest recession in history and that hampered him. I'm not going to buy that. That's not legitimate. What that was is a grand opportunity for Obama to get a lot of credit for the economy rebounding, but we never rebounded. Why? Because his administration put in policies either through Congress passing legislation or him using executive orders to hamper business with unnecessary environmental regulations. Oh, no, here we go. Oh, no, Chris hates the environment. He wants to pollute the world. No. There is a reasonable amount. I remember when George W. Bush came into office after the Clinton administration left. Bill Clinton put in place several executive orders which affected the Environmental Protection Agency, and it affected water standards across the country and emissions from coal plants and such, things that could not actually be effectively put in at a reasonable cost. Bush came in, he revoked those executive orders, and the media painted him as an environmental criminal. Oh, he's going to destroy our water. Wait a second. He simply went back to what it was 3 weeks ago before the clown Clinton left office and surreptitiously put these things in place to make him look bad. But no, they can't be honest about that. What Trump did is for the economy is the moment he came in, he signed multiple executive orders, pulling back executive orders which had legal questionable value, whether the legality of them was even questionable, that affected business and trade in this country immediately. He also started harping immediately on China and its unfair trade practices, its theft of intellectual property, and how it has been using the yuan, the Chinese currency, the renminbi, to undermine global trade by devaluing its currency. So he talked about all these things. All of those things contributed to the economic growth that took place. Obama had 1.5% GDP growth. Trump immediately gets the thing up within a matter of months to 3.6, nearly 4.4% GDP growth. Normally, I would argue that presidents have very little impact that quickly. usually their impact can be seen over years. We've seen the impact of Barack Obama over years. An abysmal economy. The man who told us that we have to live with less than 2% growth, which, by the way, is usually less than inflation. So that means your economy is contracting in a real dollar basis each and every year. But Barack Obama told us that's the new normal. That's what we have to live with. Our economy is not capable. Well, of course it's not capable when you hamper business and small business with unnecessary regulations, Sarbanes-Oxley. The list goes on and on of all these different regulations were put in place that big companies love, because big companies have the money to hire accountants and lawyers to deal with all this unnecessary stuff, but small, medium enterprises can't afford it, and you push them out of business. Anyway, so Donald Trump has had a major impact on the economy in a way that I've never seen a president before. Even Ronald Reagan, his tax repeals, it took 3-4 years before we saw the true benefits of the tax reform under Ronald Reagan. And that came just in time for him to get reelected in '84. That's what happened. Donald Trump's impact on the economy is unprecedented. Now, a president can destroy an economy overnight. Absolutely. You can impose things. Congress can pass legislation. You can sign it like the Smoot-Hawley Act, which crushed global trade and pushed us into a longer depression than was necessary. So a president can destroy an economy almost overnight. They can't help grow it overnight. The one exception is Donald Trump.
Absolutely. And again, there's a link in the description that can back up exactly what Chris just said. There's graphs, there's statistics, there's everything in there, and it's actually only like a 6-minute video or something like that. So go check that out. So we've debunked racism, we debunked the economy thing and the greedy thing. Now let's get into fascist and dictator. Now a lot of people call him that because he makes, I think, very quick decisions on some things. But it's weird because let's use the example of the riots right now. I saw a lot of people saying that he's not acting fast enough, and he was criticized for that. So what's your comment on that?
Okay, so this is a wet dream come true for the leftists who are just dying for Donald Trump to be an authoritarian. As Daniel Pipes points out in his op-ed that I got here, some quotes in here, Donald Trump has been a remarkably conservative president, not just domestically, but internationally. Let me see if I can find this quote here where he says it here. He says that much to my unending surprise, he is governed as a resolute conservative. His policies in areas of education, taxes, deregulation, and the environment have been bolder than Ronald Reagan's. His judicial appointments are among the best in the past century. His unprecedented assault on the administrative state proceeds apace, ignoring predictable howls from the Washington establishment. Even his foreign policy has been conservative, demanding that allies contribute their fair share, confronting China and Iran, and singularly supporting Israel. Ironically, as David Harsanyi notes, a potential character flaw actually works to our advantage. Trump's obstinacy seems to have made him less susceptible to the pressures that traditionally induce GOP presidents to capitulate. Absolutely right. So, yeah, Donald Trump is – okay, what was the question again, Joe? I got off of it. Sorry, I was reading that quote. I want to get back to it.
The fascist and dictator.
The fascist. That's why I was mentioning the foreign policy. If he's a fascist and dictator, then he simply would have done what he wanted. But when the courts, when idiots in the left sued the federal government and Donald Trump over the fake Muslim ban, which was travel restrictions based on legitimate basis from the Department of State and recommended to the Obama administration in October, November before he went out of office, and he sat on his hands and did nothing with it. When the Trump administration, within days of coming to office, imposed these travel restrictions, the media lied and politicians on the left of America said it was about banning Muslims. So what did Trump do? When they went to court and the court enjoined him to not enforce it, his government didn't enforce it. If he's a dictator and a fascist, he would have ignored the courts and did what he wanted to do. But no, every time the court has ordered him to change a policy, most of which I think are frivolous lawsuits, but they're getting away with it because of the courts, the administration has changed its position. If he were a dictator, then he would have taken many different steps than he's taken in his governance of this country. It's simply nonsense. But now they have what they want. They have a situation in which they're fomenting unrest by attacking city centers and attacking innocent citizens. And they're raising the temperature in our cities to an insurrection level and pretending these are demonstrations. There are demonstrations, there are legitimate demonstrations, but it's strange how social distancing is important. It's allowed now. You can be next to each other. It's no COVID-19. It magically disappeared. But when people who wanted the governors to lift it so jobs could be created, they were called terrorists and right-wing fanatics. And, anyway. So, but the point is that if Donald Trump was a dictator and a fascist, life would be a lot more difficult than it really is in this country, and it's not. If anything, he's been incredibly conservative when it comes to civil liberties. The problem with Donald Trump is you can't listen to what the guy says. You got to watch what he does, and that's what I've been saying since before he became president. But let me share this with you too. This is from Pipe's article. He also says that I've come to understand the wisdom of Selena Zito's September 2016 witticism about Trump, that the press takes him literally, but not seriously. His supporters take him seriously, but not literally. And that's actually the way it is. You have to see Donald Trump's actions, not his words. Donald Trump says, Mexico's going to pay for the wall. Well, of course they're not going to pay for the wall. That's rhetoric for a campaign. But my God, the endless nonsense about how he's a dictator and a fascist and he hates brown people, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, Mexico's not paying for the wall. Not through tariffs. In fact, they've enjoined in a even better deal for us with the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement, which is far better than NAFTA to America as a benefit and also beneficial to Mexico and Canada because Donald Trump and his rhetoric. You have to follow the man's actions, not his words. He called Little Kim and Rocket Man there and Kim Jong-un in Korea. Oh, my God, we're going to be in a nuclear war. It's all going to be over. Now, contrast this with the fact that North Korea was firing intercontinental ballistic missiles over the airspace of Japan and the territorial surface of Japan, an act of war. We could have bombed the snot out of North Korea for that act alone. They did it multiple times. But Donald Trump was restrained. He met with the Japanese, who were terrified of a war with North Korea, and they behaved quietly in the background. He called Kim names, but what that did is got Kim to come to the table. And then they talked. North Korea is not solved. Trump's not going to solve it. The only way it's going to solve it is somebody takes out the Kim family from inside North Korea. But anyway, so he is not the dictator they make him out to be. They say the same thing about Ian Kama in Botswana. Just uninformed drivel. People look at Ian Kama and go, oh, he was a general. That means he's going to be a dictator. Grow up. Eisenhower was a general. He's one of the best presidents we ever had.
Yeah. Wow, you said so much there that raised a lot of questions in my head. But I want to just stay on track for a moment. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. Great crowd that we have. There's 25 people watching and 24 likes. That's amazing. Thank you all so much. That is absolutely amazing. Keep hitting that like button. Share this with people if they want to know more about Trump. Tell people to join us if you can. Other than that, stay tuned and keep the questions coming in. I will address them at some point. I just want to stay a bit on track here. We also mentioned that Trump got criticized for not acting fast enough in the riots. I believe you have an explanation as to why there was a bit of not a delay, but there's a process.
Well, I would say there was no delay. So within 24 hours of the event actually happening. So here's the thing. So unless a murder or a crime occurs on federal property, or it's a clear civil rights violation, something in federal law, like espionage, the federal government doesn't have jurisdiction. Local and state authorities have jurisdiction. So where was Floyd killed? In Minneapolis. So the local police department in Minneapolis and also the state troopers and the governor and the mayor, they're the ones that have legal jurisdiction over those crimes. Now, if George Floyd had been an espionage suspect involved in betraying America, then the federal authorities would have some role. If it's clear that there's a potential of a civil rights violation under federal law, they have a jurisdiction. Now, Trump, within 24 hours of this happening, having seen the video, made a public statement about how vulgar and shameful and disgraceful it was unacceptable. So that's the first thing. So the media come out and say he's made no statement. That's a lie. He did it within 24 hours. Publicly, he did that. I don't follow his tweets that often, but I don't know if he did on tweet, but he did it publicly by speaking. In addition to that, he ordered the Attorney General and the Justice Department to begin an immediate civil rights investigation to see if, in fact, the man's civil rights were. So he did all he could legally do at that point. People said, well, he's too slow to react. He didn't bring the National Guard out. Well, he doesn't control the National Guard in Minnesota. The governor of Minnesota has legal authority over the National Guard until and unless they are federalized by the federal government. And there has to be a very legitimate basis for federalizing them. There was no legitimate basis to federalize the National Guard over riots in the streets of Minneapolis. Simply not the case. Now, Trump has threatened it, and his defense secretary, Mike Esper, has put his job in jeopardy by coming out and contradicting the president. So that's on Mike Esper. We'll see what happens there. But Esper actually is correct. But again, you can't listen to what Trump says. You have to see what Trump does. Trump is trying to motivate governors who are being reticent because I don't know what Trump believes, but I believe that some of these governors find it in their interest to allow their cities to burn to further a political narrative, because nothing matters in this country except defeating Donald Trump. And when he wins re-election in November, they're going to lose their minds. They're going to absolutely lose their minds. Every narrative has failed. Every collusion, every fake thing that they've went after Donald Trump has failed to stick. And they don't understand why. But let me tell you something, Joe, just before I end this comment here. When Donald Trump ran for office, I just come back from Africa, and I was all over the East Coast and into the middle part of the country. So I was every imaginable part of New York State, including in New York City, all over the boroughs, upstate, Buffalo, Rochester, all over. I was all over Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Harrisburg, everywhere, Maryland, Virginia, Delaware, New Jersey, Ohio, West Virginia, all places I visited, over the course of this time when the campaign was going on. And then I was also out in Tennessee and Kentucky. In the course of that time, including New York City, I saw a grand total of, take a guess how many Hillary Clinton election signs. People put them in their yards, little banners up, vote Hillary, I'm with her, whatever the banners were. Take a guess how many, just a reasonable guess. Don't make something fictional, but just take a fair guess. All those places.
I wouldn't have a single clue, dude. 1 million?
Okay.
2 million? I don't know. I don't even know how many. I don't even know the population of America right now.
Two. I saw 2 signs for people encouraging people to vote for Hillary Clinton in all those places.
Oh, wow.
I saw them in Amish country in Kentucky on 2 Amish farms. Yeah, there's Amish in Kentucky too.
No.
That's right.
I'm surprised that the Amish wanted to vote for Hillary.
Well, it was an Amish country. I don't know if those farms are owned by Amish, but all the farms around there. So Amish country, so to speak. Okay. So an Amish region. I saw thousands and thousands of Donald Trump things. Donald Trump held a rally here at the local high school. Well, not local for here, but the next county over in Carlisle Pike. That high school is a massive school. It has a gymnasium. It holds thousands of people. There were 15,000 people. I went and stood in line for 3 hours and didn't get in the building just to hear what he had to say. We had over 5,000, 6,000 people stuck outside in a downpour in the rain that couldn't get in, watching it on their phones just to be there. Hillary Clinton, 2 days prior, had a rally in Harrisburg in which 138 people showed up. Now, that's the state capital. This is a local, peri-urban high school. And they don't understand why Donald Trump won. Well, that's why he won. Before COVID-19, Donald Trump was going to run away with this thing because Donald Trump was on path to take 20 to 30% of the black vote in this country. And that's what is scaring them, because without black voters in this country, these folks can't. I mean, look at Joe Biden. He was dead in the water, but because he hoodwinked black voters in South Carolina into thinking he gave a crap about black people, despite his voting record and his governance record, which is not positive for black Americans. I don't know why they fall for this. Because he won South Carolina, suddenly he's the front runner. And he won South Carolina because the majority of black voters in the Democratic primary were actually black, because the balance ethnically is. Anyway, so there you go. Yeah.
So I wanted to quickly also mention that Chris earlier talked about the whole border, what's her name? What's that chickie's name? You spoke about it earlier. You got this video
Pelosi?
About it. Yes. So he's got a video on his channel that explains in more detail this whole thing about Pelosi and how she lied and all that stuff. So please, that's also linked in the description below, as well as Chris's YouTube channel. If you guys are not already subscribed to it, I highly recommend that you do, because he does a lot of analysis on South African politics as well and South African news. But yeah, that's a very interesting video, so go watch that. I even put a timestamp in the description to show you where exactly is the point that he talks about that particular topic. So we discussed he didn't act fast enough. I think also that people are using this opportunity to also once again say that he's fascist, say that he's a dictator, because there's this one thing that was going around quite recently, that he was going to a church. I can't remember where the church was, and there was a peaceful riot or peaceful protest. And they got this, I don't know, I forgot what they call a priestess, a nun, I don't know, to talk about her experience during this time. And the story she was saying was that the cops Trump wanted to go to the church for a photo op and it's gone all over this picture with him of the Bible. That's what he wanted to do, and all the cops came in and caused chaos and craziness. Now, I watched this footage quite a bit, and I noticed something. That when she's talking about the riots, they're showing, well, not the riots, but like the police coming in. They're showing police coming in and the people running. Well, it looks like people are running. But if you watch it very carefully, I'm not making this stuff up. I should have actually linked this as well to the description. You can see that CNN fast-forwarded the footage. So it looks chaotic. The camera is shaking. It looks like people are running for their lives. It looks like the cops are charging at the people, but they're not. They're actually walking. And that's one example of the lies that the media tells.
Well, and in fact, Joe, in the footage you're talking about from CNN, the least trusted name in news, perhaps, well, maybe not, maybe it's MSNBC, but least trusted name in news. The footage from CNN, not only is it doctored in that they sped up the cadence of the video, but also the fact that they lied about what's happening here. They said that Trump cleared the streets. Okay, let's parse that out. Those are New York City policemen. They don't work for the federal government. They don't work for the Secret Service. The Secret Service is responsible for the security of the president. Now, the Secret Service and the FBI do coordinate with local police and ask them to clear streets and stuff like that. But that's not what happened here. And beyond that, watch the footage at the proper speed. And even at the fast speed, you can see that this wasn't a peaceful demonstration of protesters. Look at the bricks and the bottles and things being thrown at the police officers before they even start moving forward. The reason they move forward is because people were creating a threatening situation by assaulting. You throw a bottle of water at someone, that's assault. That's a federal crime. That's a state crime. Well, it's a federal crime, it's not federal charge, but that is a crime. That's assault. That gets you in jail with a felony conviction, potentially. You punch someone, that's assault. And these people were assaulting law enforcement officers because they're a bunch of malcontents. There were legitimate people who were just watching this. And if you watch the videos at the proper speed, people moved back. Those behind it who weren't instigating trouble just moved away as the police cleared the space. Complete fiction and lie. And it just goes on and on and on. It's just insane to me how easily people around the world are hoodwinked by what they see and by what they're told by others, that people can't think for themselves. You know, at some point, if Donald Trump was the Satan that these people make him out to be, at some point, people would say, well, how can he still be in office? Anyway.
That's very true. And also something else that was interesting when I was researching for our discussion now. If I Google, Donald Trump policies, for example, unbelievable amount of just let's just say information for now. Amount of information of just, you can see it, just endless videos of the media calling him a racist, calling him this, calling him that, blah, blah, blah. Nothing really about his policies. And they try and obviously take, some of the videos are about his policies and they try and twist it, obviously. But then if you just take a moment to step back for a second and look at your screen, you start to realize, wow, ABC, MSNBC, CNN, all saying the exact same thing about him, except maybe
the exact same words, exact same verbs. Isn't that funny?
Except maybe Fox. Fox is maybe the only one, but then they're also labeled as right-wing, racist, crazy people. But again, when you start taking a step back and looking at that, you should start to question what exactly is going on in the media. And here's the other thing. I mentioned this to the guy that asked me why Trump. And I said, if you watched, and you can go and watch on YouTube, every single speech that the President Trump came out during lockdown of the USA. He was out every day, almost, giving a speech and telling people about the progress, telling people about what's next, updating everyone. And you will see the same thing that happens in South Africa. When someone like Ernest Roots gets interviewed by a journalist, or what's his name, Steenhuisen gets interviewed, or anyone that what's his name, Gareth Cliff as well. When the narrative, who's the we and which South Africans, give me a list. The same thing happens with Donald Trump. Watch. I encourage you to watch. Even if you just skip to the part where the media asks questions, you will see they try and twist his words time and time and time again. And yes, because he's not a perfect politician, he does slip up. But then that's when the media, like hyenas on a fresh carcass, go after him and they try and just make him trip. And it's disgusting to watch. It really is.
Well, here's the thing. So the White House is under no obligation whatsoever to hold a press conference.
Yeah.
Yet they came out of the gate in an effort to be transparent. It's funny because the Obama administration claimed that they were the most transparent administration in history. That is the most laughable statement I've ever heard, other than Joe Biden claiming that there was no corruption in the Obama administration. The list of corruption cases is endless. It's disgusting. And it involves some of the most egregious violations of the U.S. Constitution and abuses of American citizens in our history. Things that harken back to Franklin Roosevelt putting Japanese Americans into concentration camps. That sort of thing is happening here with the violation of civil rights and constitutional rights. But anyway, if I lost my track of that. Sorry about the senior moment there. I was making a point and I lost it.
That's all right.
Went too far down that road.
It's okay. But I was basically talking about the media and how there's that narrative, and even in the interviews after the press conferences. Sorry.
Oh yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. I'm back now, Joe. I got it. Cool. So I got back to my point. Okay, so the press conference. So they held press conference, and what did the press conference become? It was a got you moment, so that the egotistical journalists could get attention. Ooh, look at me. Like this idiotic question recently when they're doing the coronavirus. So do you think it's fair for a president who got 80,000 people killed to get reelected? That's not a question. That's a nonsense. That's the sort of stuff that was happening at press conferences. So they stopped having the press conferences because the journalists were abusive. They weren't journalists, like Acosta, that clown. And so they stopped having, then they whined about it. Well, now the press conferences haven't happened for a long time, on a regular basis. They don't care anymore. So Donald Trump comes out when COVID-19 takes off, and he starts coming to the press conference every day to make sure that people aware of what's going on and answer their questions. And then suddenly they don't want to cover it because he's there too much. Why? Because people are listening to Donald Trump and they're trusting him. Confidence in Trump is rising. The polls were showing that Trump was becoming more popular with voters. So the media, the disgraceful, shameful excuse for media, decided that they were going to not cover his press conferences. Seriously, I thought COVID-19 was the second coming of the Black Plague. We were supposed to be worried about this. It was going to kill it, unless you're demonstrating or looting, then it doesn't affect you. But it's second coming of the Black Plague. And so Donald Trump, unlike the missing Cyril Ramaphosa, who's somewhere in North Korea in a bunker with Kim Jong-un watching who knows what, maybe they're watching Team Spirit or Team America, one of those movies. Anyway, unlike Cyril Ramaphosa, Trump is actually out there telling people stuff every day. Frankly, I stopped listening to him after a few days because it was the same stuff all the time. But he's being transparent. He's answering questions from abusive and the disrespect heaped on Donald Trump. He's the president of the United States. Listen, Barack Obama was an ass, but I wasn't disrespectful to the guy. Well, number one, because I was in uniform, and that would be insubordination. But number two, I wouldn't have been disrespectful to him. He's a president. But the stuff they say about Melania Trump, it's just disgusting.
Yeah.
This is an immigrant who speaks 5 languages, has been a rousing success, was fabulously successful on her own merit before she ever married Donald Trump. And the things they say about her. All the things they purport to care about, immigrants and such. Anyway,
Well, speaking about Trump's family, this brings us on to the next myth. And it'll be the final one. I mean, there's plenty of myths, but these are the main ones that definitely circulate in the media. This one, this fake account, and I don't care what you people say, it is a fake account. And I'm sure Chris will back me up on this one. Anonymous coming out and trying to label Trump as a pedophile. And this you can find on their account, all right? They present pictures of Trump with a young woman and say, look at Trump. Yeah, and then they try and also add the whole Epstein thing to it. It is true that Trump did rub shoulders with Epstein. But if you watch a documentary that was recently released on Netflix, all right, it's the story of Epstein. They also mentioned that Trump was a friend of Epstein, but he never went to the island. He never did anything else with Epstein. They just had parties together. They happened to be around each other. That is it. It's mentioned in that documentary. That's number one. Number two, the biggest thing is that the pictures that he is that they're presenting to the public is Donald Trump's daughter. It's his daughter. Do your research. You'll find it. It's his daughter that he's kissing, that he's holding. It's absolutely absurd. And of course, the media ran with this and tried to label Epstein and Trump together. Of course, Hillary Clinton was also involved in there and stuff like that. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole Epstein thing. But I'm just saying, this is one of those myths that people try to, push forward. I don't know. Do you agree with me on that, Chris?
Well, I do. And it goes, but before I answer that question very quickly, Dan Verkman says the left killed Hollywood in most movies. It did. Ironically, 50, 60 years ago, Hollywood was very conservative. And now it's a complete opposite. And it's acid on social structure and the social fabric of this country. It's just horrible. But anyway, back to the question. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, you're right. That was people doctor things or they lie about it and people just believe it. So what I said at the beginning of it, I want to say at the beginning of this, but I really say is that I suspect most people watching it probably agree with our view on this. But if anybody tunes in and they think this is going to be about, pro-Trump or trying to change your opinion, that's not why you and I are talking about this. We're just trying to dispel the myths about him, and you can make your own judgment about Donald Trump. I've made my own judgment. The man got my vote on Tuesday. I voted for him in the Republican primary. First time I voted in a primary since 1988. I vote every year, but only in the general election because I wasn't in a political party until recently. So you can make your own mind up about Donald Trump, but make your own mind up. Don't make your mind up based on the New York Times or the Guardian or the Mail and Guardian or SABC or MSNBC. Make your own mind up based on your own conclusions, based on what you see the man do, not what he says. But yeah, so to your point, they distorted that story. Here's another one. The famous thing about the guy as a rapist, that comes from claims against him by a number of women. But all powerful people, men and women, get false claims by people or get court cases where people are trying to get money out of them, whether something happened or not. There's been not a single case of evidence of Donald Trump ever having done anything he's accused of when it comes to that realm. Now, the Epstein thing, Donald Trump banned Epstein from coming to Mar-a-Lago, to his estate in Florida, because the guy was creepy. He didn't want to be around him. Now, I don't know if he knew about this, but he was creepy and he didn't want him around. So, yeah, they move in the same circles, but so did Lana Marks or Banana Marks, depending on who you listen to. Anyway, and so
you're going to trigger people now with that name.
Yeah.
People are going to go crazy.
And so did Jay-Z, and so did Bill de Blasio, and all of these people move in these circles, these social circles, yes. And that's where Epstein was moving in. So trying to attribute Epstein's crimes and his trafficking of underage girls and so on to anyone else without evidence is nonsense. Now, let's go back to the thing that was this rape thing, where this comes from, that's really played out. During the campaign, after it became clear that Donald Trump was going to become the nominee, in part, thank you to the media for giving him all the free press coverage and making him look like a celebrity, because they like to do that. And they made a ton of money off of it. And then, of course, they had buyer's remorse. They thought they were getting a Ferrari, and they got, a Pinto. They didn't quite get the Ferrari they thought they were getting. They got a little Geo Metro or something like that, or a Hyundai. So not to throw shade on Hyundai, they make decent cars. But anyway, yeah. So what happened is he was in that van with Billy Bush, and this is from years ago, like 8 years prior. And he was being interviewed, and he was off camera, and the mic was still hot, and the guy was still recording him. So it was probably surreptitiously to see if they could get something out of him. And so what he said was the following. Listen, in this town, women are so desperate to get attention and gain favor with the powerful and the rich. The producers, the stars of shows. You can get away with anything with some of these women. You can grab them by the crotch. I use a better term than he used. You can grab them by the crotch, and they'll just smile at you because they're desperate to get attention. That's what he said. That was turned into, he grabs his daughter by the vagina, or this guy's a cab. He just grabs. No, that never happened. Did he say what he said caddish and boorish? Yeah. Is it disrespectful? Yeah. Is it also things that a lot of men say in private? Yeah. Should men say it? No, they should never say things like that. But that doesn't mean that he did those things. He was making a point, and his point was valid. If you've been around anybody in Hollywood or in the media, he's exactly right. That stuff happens. Anyway, so all blown out of proportion, all distorted, anything. It doesn't matter. I think Andrew Wilkow is the one who said this well. Donald Trump could cure cancer tomorrow, and the left would come out, and they would complain that he is xenophobic and he's against cancer, and they would support cancer. The left would come out in favor of cancer. Donald Trump is an anti-cancerite. We must support cancer because he's a bigot. That's what they would do. This is how lunacy this is. This is beyond Bush derangement syndrome. These people are seriously triggered by anything Donald Trump. Donald Trump could get up tomorrow and suddenly we have a Mars colony. He didn't tell us about it, and people are living there, and they're having happy lives, and they're all Rainbow Nation, and it's a trans community, and the Donald Trump funded and supported, and they'll find a reason to be unhappy about it.
You're absolutely right. I love it.
And this is coming from a guy that doesn't like him. I don't like Trump, but I'm honest about him. I'm intellectually honest.
We don't like him. I don't like him. I don't like him as a person.
But you're intellectually honest.
Exactly. I really don't. I used to be in that camp, by the way. I used to be in that camp where I used to think he was racist. I used to think he was an idiot. I used to think, I was just like, I hated him. He's probably going to go into office and fire everyone, which he did, but with good reason. And, I used to make fun of the guy, like, all the time. I'm not even kidding. But then I just, again, with the media and how much they hate him, I was like, how can you, you know what it was? I watched his roast again. That's what happened. I watched the Donald Trump roast. And I was like, these guys love him. Everyone loves him. They mentioned that he was going to run for presidency even in that roast. And everyone kind of applauded. Watch it. They applaud him when they say that he's going to run for president. Everyone in the room claps. Yeah. But now everyone hates him?
But then but then he actually did.
And then, yeah, well, that's the thing. So
he committed the ultimate sin of actually running for office. Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah.
And then,
no, it's just
sorry.
Good.
I also want to mention this, and I think this is a very good, again, I want for people, again, I'm not trying to tell you to vote for him. I'm not saying that you necessarily have to support him. But I do want people to understand that there is a bit of an agenda. Now, people I know get kind of like roll their eyes at me once I say that. But okay, here's how I can prove to you that there is an agenda, all right? There is a Netflix series called, documentary called, trying to remember it now, I Am Jane Doe. Chris, have you seen it?
Yes.
All right.
I know the story, but go ahead.
Yeah. So that is about human trafficking, okay? Specifically with young women and stuff like that. And the fight to bring it to the surface is also about how a website was kind of allowing human trafficking to happen. And the lawyers fighting this and trying to take the website down, and a lot of things get exposed. It's a very, very, very good documentary. But there's a specific part of this documentary that they mention, a type of law that kind of protects the website from putting on these posts. And recently, I think it was about a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, Donald Trump signed an executive order. Chris would know more about this than I would. And actually fixes that law that protects websites from putting that kind of content onto that they no longer can hide behind this law. It's been amended now. And even Donald Trump in the press conference said, this will help us fight human trafficking. So watch that documentary, I Am Jane Doe, to understand a bit more, and then watch that press conference about the executive order. Chris, if you can help me remember what that executive order was.
Well, are you referring to the one about social media?
Yes.
That he just signed? Yes. Okay. Well, the intent that's an ancillary benefit of it is it potentially help stop that. But the reason for it is because Twitter took the unprecedented step of censoring Donald Trump. No, they didn't block his content, but they had the temerity to claim to fact check him on an opinion.
Yeah.
How do you fact check an opinion? An opinion is opinion. Everybody's got one. It's kind of like your fourth point of contact. Everybody's got an opinion. Now, if you're claiming facts in there, you want to fact check, but he wasn't claiming facts. He was making an argument. So they fact checked him, but they don't fact check the Chinese Communist Party that's on Twitter. They don't fact check Antifa on Twitter. They don't fact check Alyssa Milano. Oh my God, let's start fact checking Alyssa Milano. That lunatic that's on there, the nonsense she spews, the hatred that comes out of her mouth. I read some of those things on air that she said. It's disgraceful. She has no facts and she just rants and raves. So that's what that was about, because under the act that was passed in the past couple of decades, it gave internet companies protection, legal protection. So, for instance, what we say on this stream, YouTube can't be held liable for it.
Yeah.
But if we came on here and we started advocating murdering Hemsbach, if we murder Hemsbach, and we were in favor of going out and decapitating Hemsbach, and we started a campaign and the Hemsbach were wiped out, we started a genocidal campaign against Hemsbach. If we started doing that, YouTube cannot be held liable for that.
Yeah.
But they could cut our content. And the problem is that these media companies are cutting content of things that don't agree with their executive leadership's position. And we've seen this bias taking place by, for example, executives who used to work at Google who've come out and pointed things out. So that's what this is all about. Now these companies do not have blanket protection, but it's limited. The executive order only has certain impact because the president is not the legislature. He can't change law. Presidents have been trying to change law with executive orders for 5 or 6 decades or even longer. It's gotten worse and worse and worse. Trump has actually been rolling back most of that nonsense by revoking executive orders. But some executive orders stay in a long time. Executive order, the one for security clearances, Reagan signed it in the early 1980s. It still affects how we do security clearances for classified information in the executive branch. But it only applies to the executive branch. The president has no legal authority over the legislature, over the judiciary, or over the American population when it comes to law. He can enforce the laws. He's a chief law enforcement officer, which is funny when I hear he's interfering in the Justice Department. He owns the Justice Department. He's the president. If you don't like that, vote for someone else, Rocco. Learn your system. I got another point about Trump. We can get back to it in a second.
Yeah, you can actually look. I'm pretty much sorted. I feel like, again, that Jane Doe documentary really touched me. It had some very interesting things, and I encourage everyone to go watch it. If you don't find it on Netflix, download it and find it. And then again, go watch that press conference about that executive order with the social media. you'll see that it will change your mind about a lot of things about Trump. And at least get you to think, hey, maybe he's not such a bad guy. You might still not like him, that's fine, and you might not even vote for him, that's fine. Again, the point of this stream isn't to get you guys to fall in love with him. I'm certainly not in love with him, but it is to bring some things to the table and bring some facts to the table and help you make an educated decision. Chris, before you mention what you wanted to say, guys, if you have any questions, I hope, Chris, you don't mind maybe staying just a little bit longer.
No, I'm fine.
If you guys have any questions that you want to ask, we're going to open the floor just after Chris is done mentioning what he wants to mention now. So you guys can start dropping some questions if you want.
Well, it's actually 3 points real quick, Joe, so let me try to get through it. So I've long been an outspoken critic of trafficking. And the reason I have is because working in embassies, one of the things I've been responsible for the last 20 years is contributing to the annual human trafficking report that the embassies do. And so we have to add what information we can there. So I have deep insight into what's happening around the world when it comes to this. Plus, I also had an interest in it because the topic I found very repulsive. The movie Taken with Liam Neeson, brilliantly done. I like that, not that it was Hollywood, but I like that it also raised the issue. When people think of trafficking, they think of girls from Moldova, they think of Eastern European, they think of Thai, they think of Asians being trafficked into sex trade and stuff like that. That's all true. That's horrific. But little black and white girls from all over the United States are trafficked all the time, each and every year. They're taken and sold as slaves abroad, and they're also trafficked here in the United States. And this is a topic that law enforcement at the state, local, and national level never raised to the top issue. Trafficking is disgusting. And why don't they do it? Because these traffickers are very well connected. They're influential, and you wouldn't know who some of them are. So people are afraid to go after it. Very good series was done by, what's that one actress? I can't think of her name. I'm drawing a blank right now. Mira Sorvino, I think it was. Yeah, she did a mini series about trafficking a few years ago. I forget the name of it, but it was brilliant. And in that, there was one of the traffickers who was snatched from her home in Eastern Europe, somewhere, Romania or something like that, and they threatened to kill her daughter and such. It's a fictional story, but it's based on real events. They brought her back to the States and pimped her out along with little girls that they were bringing in who thought they were competing in beauty pageants. This is a narrative that's gone on forever. And they were sex slaves here in America. We have sex slaves in this country because these people are getting away with it. So trafficking, anything that can be done to stop trafficking, I'm all in favor of. Dan Verickman had a point there. I'm going to get back to in a second. But my second point was, when they talk about Trump, you get this envy for people. Well, he got all his money from his daddy. His daddy gave him money. Well, his daddy made his, even if he did, but his daddy made his fortune. He earned it. So he can do what he wants with it. It's short of the state confiscating, wealth and inheritance tax. So Donald Trump got somewhere between $1 and $5 million of seed capital, something like that, from his father. So what? He turned it into $4 billion. That's pretty impressive. That's spinning some gold out of yarn. That's impressive. Anyway, so that thing bothers me. The other part about it, too, is that how did he make his money? He bought parts of New York City that were distressed, underdeveloped, abandoned, and nothing was happening, and turned them into affordable housing, upscale housing, businesses, industries all over New York City. He, not single-handedly, but he was one of the key drivers in bringing New York City back from the embarrassing bankrupt city that was at the end of the 1970s into the most dynamic and vital major metropolitan area in the world by the time Rudy Giuliani was the mayor. Now, it's taken a big step backwards under the lunatic who runs it now, Bill de Blasio, who's actually Wilhelm, that's his name. That's his real surname, but he took his mother's surname because he didn't like his father. Anyway, his real name is Wilhelm. He's a Kraut. He's a German. Oh, that was a socially unacceptable term, Kraut. All right. And the third point here was Dan Verickman had a point there. He said he made a mistake of mentioning Trump, and now he doesn't have friends. Those friends don't talk to him anymore. So here's the thing about this, and this is when I talk about you can't have a cogent conversation about Trump with even educated, talented people you think are insightful. So I used to work very closely with someone that works for the Congressional Research Service, and I don't know that we were friends, but we were colleagues. We got along really well. I was a source in many reports that this amazing analyst wrote for Congress. This analyst did an amazing job. And when Trump was inaugurated, I was at a hockey game in another city, and I was waiting for the game that night, so I had nothing else to do. So I put the TV on in the hotel because there's nothing in the town I was in. I was just flipping channels. And I watched Fox, MSNBC, CNN, back and forth, and watching the coverage of the inauguration. And people were covering the demonstrations and the parades and people marching. And I was seeing, Madonna with her vulgar language and Gina Davis, all these actresses out there. And the networks were showing people walking through the streets dressed as vaginas, and they're walking through residential areas. and saying the most foul, carrying signs with the most vulgar statements on it. And there's children out there. I mean, small little girls and such. I mean, what kind of example are you setting for them? So this colleague, I don't do Facebook much, and this is kind of why I never really got around Facebook much, because I happened to go on Facebook that day, and somebody posted something. I went to it and I said, oh, and my colleague lives in D.C. and saw a parade, people marching out in front of her house. She felt that, she wanted to argue about some of the points that were being raised by this group. And so she went out and joined them. And so she sent pictures of it. And the stuff she showed me, there was none of that nonsense going on. Nobody was being vulgar. She showed little short video clips. I'm like, oh, and I wrote back to her. I said, hey, thanks for posting this, because if you watch the news, that's not the impression you get. You get a completely different impression about this. It's all about hating Trump. She goes, no, it's not about that. It's about equal pay and this, that, and the other. And I said, well, that may be your view, and that may be the people you're marching with, but that's not what we're seeing on TV. Even on MSNBC and CNN, they're showing these people out there dressed in the most horrible ways, saying the most terrible things, and it's not about anything except hating Trump. If it was about equal pay and it was about women's rights and things like that, why didn't they demonstrate to effect change in Congress last summer when Congress was in session, or do this before they left for the fall session? Or if they wanted to prevent Trump from becoming president, if these women were so concerned about women's issues and they thought Trump was going to be against them, where were they the 2 weeks before the election in November? Was it too cold for them to go out and have these demonstrations to change people's minds? No, they wait till he gets inaugurated so they can insult him.
Yeah.
It's nothing but insulting Trump. And at the same time, of course, we have these Antifa terrorists destroying shops and businesses in D.C., not being arrested, this being tolerated by the D.C. police. Yeah. And this is what we have. Anyway, so that's the 3 points I want to bring up.
Cool. If we have time, maybe we can touch on Antifa, but I want to address some of the questions that have come in from specifically Paulie and Sean. So Sean was first, so I'll bring him up. So Sean says, Chris, do you know about the apparent huge amount of sealed judgments and convictions that is happening in the USA against government and powerful people? Is there truth in it?
Sean, I do not have any inside knowledge of that. That's not simply me and my usual Joe show. I can neither confirm nor deny, but I honestly don't know. I am very skeptical. I hear a lot of people talking about this. Dan Bongino, who knows people in government, is talking about it. Others talking about it. I have zero confidence. Hillary Clinton has not been charged with a federal crime yet for her violation of the Espionage Act. I don't need an investigation to know that. She admitted it. She admitted her guilt. She doesn't care. She's not been charged with a crime. And all the people involved with all of this abuse of the IRS, Lois Lerner, against the Tea Party groups, the abuse of the Justice Department, Rosenstein, who just testified and now changed his testimony. He denied, well, he didn't change. He refused to answer the question a couple years ago when he wasn't caught by the short hairs. Now he's caught by the short hairs. He says, no, I never would have signed the FISA request for the warrant. I have low confidence that these indictments are going to happen. There's lots of rumor around the town that there's grand juries in session. Of course, that would be private. We wouldn't know about it. My confidence level is very high. I think the only way these prosecutions are going to take place is if and when Donald Trump wins re-election, then maybe we'll see some of these prosecutions take place. But he's not going to do it now because then the left will just use it. Look, he's just using the state to go after his enemies. So I doubt that you're going to see any prosecutions of any of these people who deserve to be prosecuted, and many belong behind bars. So I don't have high confidence, Joe. There's a lot of talk about it, but please point out one high-level politician or government state apparatchik or bureaucrat who's been tried for anything. I don't know of any.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so Paulie asks, Joe Emilio, what is the media's endgame? Click media, thus higher advert revenue. So that's he was guessing. What is the mainstream media's goal with anti-Trump global rhetoric? Is Joe Biden so weak that he can't create dollars for mainstream media? What's the aim? So there's quite a few questions here, but I think the idea overall is what is the main aim of the mainstream media here? What is the agenda? Do you think it's about the money for them to get basically that they're saying things about Trump just to drive clicks and stuff like that and get some revenue? Or is it because Joe Biden is so weak that they need to create money on his own or through mainstream media? So what's the aim? Chris, I think you would know more about this than I would, to be honest.
All right, so I was writing some notes down to make sure I get these points and don't have a senior moment there while we're chatting. So I've got 4 points to talk about that. To answer that question specifically, there's 4 things. Money, yes, absolutely. Anything you say, if you want someone to go to your Twitter account, say something positive, negative about Donald Trump, and you'll suddenly have 1 million followers. I'm embellishing slightly, but you get my point.
I said something positive. I don't have 1 million followers.
Maybe you're in South Africa, man. Same here. No, if you want ad revenue, then run stories about Donald Trump. Mostly negative because that sells. People like discord on their news. You don't see 3 puppies saved today in a daring rescue by a local law enforcement officer. You don't see many of those stories on television, even though they happen every day. You don't hear that the poverty rate amongst a certain group is the lowest it's ever been in the history of the United States, because that doesn't sell newspapers. That doesn't sell. You see some of that, but people don't focus on it. People want to be shocked. And it even goes back to when it was just newspaper and radio. People want to be shocked. They buy the newspapers that carry the salacious details and stories on the cover of them, whether they're true or not. We got into a war with Spain over a fake bombing. Remember the Maine. That was all orchestrated by people who wanted to put the United States into war with Spain. Spain didn't blow the Maine up. The Maine blew itself up. Anyway, so money, absolute money. Fellow travelers. Unfortunately, our universities have become infected with leftists who were disenchanted troublemakers in the 1960s, many of them, who became professors on universities, and the education system has been taken over by the political left in many respects. So many people in the news industry are fellow travelers who have the same worldview. And so they have this view that something is wrong and it's their job, their mission to fix it. And they will be willing to look past all facts, all reason, all cogent discussion, regardless of the evidence put in front of their face. While Trump had an economy that was growing at 3.4%, they were focused on other things because they didn't want to report the story. Well, that's dishonest. If Barack Obama had a 3.6% GDP growth in this country, they would have been dancing in the streets talking about a golden age for America. But they weren't, because it doesn't fit the narrative, because they're fellow travelers and they want to look pessimistically. Virtue signaling. That's the third reason. So money, fellow traveler syndrome, and virtue signaling. A lot of this is about virtue signaling. A lot of these people consider themselves to be erudite, intelligent, which is ironic. A lot of these people have less education than a lot of people walking around the streets. And even if they have education, they haven't learned from it. Having a degree doesn't make you smart. Donald Trump has a degree from the Wharton Business School. Anybody who has a degree from the Wharton Business School is pretty smart. Any single graduate, even the lowest person in each class, is pretty smart to get a degree from the Wharton School. And he got it a long time ago. Very smart guy. Anyway, so virtually signaling, they want to feel good. They feel good. Like Amazon. That's Jeff Bezos and virtually signaling. We support, for those who don't know, I put a banner up because I opened my Amazon account and I was greeted by a sign that says, Amazon supports Black Lives Matter. We support the Black community. The two are not synonymous. Supporting Black lives has nothing to do with supporting the Black community, if such a thing exists. So it's virtue signaling because it makes them feel good. And then finally, it's political. There are people in the media who are political creatures, and they use their access to the media as a weapon to further their interests. Look at Don Lemon and Rachel Maddow. Rachel Maddow is an angry, angry, angry person who has a persona. I've seen people whom I know and I respect defend her and say that's not really how she is. That's just a persona. But the damage that she does with the lies that she tells means to me that I can't buy that. So that's really the reason. Money, fellow travelers, virtue signaling, and political purposes. That's why the media does what it does. Now, that's my assessment. I could be wrong.
No, I agree with you, man. You can see it. Again, when you take that step back, you can see all that stuff. So, yeah, maybe research a bit and have Chris Wyatt in the background explaining that, and you will see all those 3 points. You can even see it in South Africa, the media here. The same applies here. All right, so we have another question that's come through from Ludwig. I'm butchering that name. I'm sure I am.
No, you are definitely butchering it in Afrikaans and in German.
Did Trump take control over the Federal Reserve Bank? I don't know, Chris. What are you? Yeah.
I've not heard that, and I'm not aware that's even legally possible. The Federal Reserve Bank is a private corporation, a private entity that is not belong to the U.S. government. Our central bank, our Federal Reserve, is independent, at least in theory. But for the last 4 decades, we've had presidents collude with the central bankers, the Federal Reserve. The federal bank is a banking system. There are banks in Cleveland, in Kansas City, New York, all over the country, several locations, 6 or 8 of them, something like that. And it's all part of the Federal Reserve System. It's a private entity outside the U.S. government. But in my view, this is my personal assessment, we've seen collusion since about 1990 with the Federal Reserve and successive presidents trying to keep interest rates artificially low, because the Federal Reserve Bank is the one that sets the prime lending rate. The prime lending rate is the baseline amount that it costs to borrow money. So right now it's at like nearly zero. It was down to a quarter of a basis point, 0.25%, half a point, not not too long ago. I don't know what the current Federal Reserve rate is because nobody's talking about it. But the Federal Reserve rate, from there, all lending flows from that. So if, let's say the Federal Reserve rate is 4%, then commercial banks will get money at 4.5% to 5%. They'll loan money for cars at 8 to 9%, home mortgages at 6 or 7%. That's how they make money off the difference, the spread there. So the Federal Reserve is independent. I'm not aware of them taking over. Some countries, the central bank belongs to the government and they can control it, but that's not the case here in the United States. But I think they have worked in collusion at times.
Yeah. All right. So with that, there's not any other questions, and we have gone a bit over time, but I like to try and keep this short because I know people's attention span isn't very long, and I do want people to watch this in the future and not be discouraged by the long hour and a half or anything like that. I did want to touch on Antifa, but maybe we can leave that for another video sometime in the future, especially after we see what happens now, because I think for the next 2-3 weeks things are going to be very interesting. And I think you and I are both going to be, well, you especially, but I'm definitely going to be keeping a close eye on the events that are happening now in America. And I did see some questions earlier on about the riots in the USA. I didn't really want to touch on it too much during this conversation, mainly because everything is a developing story. And we don't have all the facts at the moment. There's so much stories going around. So I thought let's just, keep on point. So, Chris, is there anything you want to say that maybe we forgot to say?
Sure. I just want to make it clear that Donald Trump is a racist. He's an evil person. He hates all brown people. And he is actively working with the Gettys, the Rothschilds. And he goes to the place in Colorado known as the Meadows once every fortnight to discuss plotting the fascist takeover of the world with his dear friends in Iran and North Korea.
And the Illuminati.
It's utter... And where?
The Illuminati. Don't forget it. He's like.
Oh, I forgot the Illuminati. That's right. Yeah, that's of course you know where that's from. That's from So I Married an Axe Murder. One of the best things ever. The Gettys, the Rothschilds, and Colonel Sanders before he went tits up. Good stuff. Anyway, yeah. Back in the days when Mike Meyer was truly funny and was active in Hollywood. But anyway, no, seriously. Listen, people can like or dislike Donald Trump. I'm not here to encourage him. I will be honest, and because I'm transparent, at least when it comes to when I talk about issues on the streams and my videos, is that I did vote for Donald Trump twice now in a presidential election and in a primary, and I will vote for him again regardless of what happens between now and November. I can't imagine anything would change my mindset on that. Daniel Pipes, who despises him, even called him, as I mentioned, Trumpolini, as to allusion to the fascist Mussolini, has now changed his opinion on him because of his policies have been very good for America and good for the world. He's turned out to be very conservative on issues, even though the guy has been a social liberal most of his life. So, you have to look at what Trump actually does, not what he says. Don't lose your crap. Don't lose your cock because Donald Trump says something. Just because he says it doesn't mean anything. Back to Joe's point, Donald Trump says things because he knows it will set people off, or it will set the conditions that will be favorable for him to do things, just like he did with China, just like he did with Mexico and with Canada. And it works in the world's interest. And if you don't believe me, that's fine. You don't have to believe me. I'm not here to campaign for Donald Trump. I'll do that elsewhere.
Cool, man. Chris, please stay on the line as I sign off, and I'll give you a proper goodbye on Skype. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for now. Maybe later on, maybe in the coming weeks, like I said, Chris and I will touch on Antifa in later videos. But thank you all so much for tuning in. Please share this video with anyone and everyone. Again, it's not about making people support Trump. It's just about putting some facts that the media is not talking about to the forefront, and then people can decide for themselves. Like we said many times on this stream, we don't really like Trump, but you can't argue his policies and you can't argue what he's done for the country. And at the end of the day, America needed a man like Trump to fix it, and that's why he's got my vote as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, please share, and subscribe. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. I'm interviewing a whole lot more interesting people in the coming weeks, and I'm going to be having Jack Miller from the Cape Independence Party. He's going to be on my show in the coming weeks, as well as Conscious Caracal and Ramon Cabernet will be on my show in the next few days. Yes, Chris?
Sorry about that, Joe. I didn't mean to interrupt your stream, but you just mentioned that. I forgot to mention I will be on Conscious Caracal on Tuesday
Cool, yeah.
He asked me to come on his channel. So sorry about that. I didn't mean to steal your thunder, but I keep forgetting to mention it. I didn't mention on my stream, and I forgot to mention here, but I will be on Conscious Caracal on Tuesday. Sorry about that, Joe.
Awesome. I'm going to tune into that one. And by the way, if you guys like Chris Wyatt and you're new to this channel, please go subscribe. His link is in the description below. And don't forget to check out all those other links to other videos to back up what we've been saying in the description below. So ladies and gentlemen, good night, stay safe, and I'll catch you at the next one.